Welcome to We Chat Divorce, hosted by Karen Shalou, Legal Liaison, and Katherine Shanahan, CDFA. Each episode, we sit down with divorce professionals and industry experts to provide insights and frank discussions about real people, real situations, and real divorce to help you achieve your best life post-divorce. This episode of We Chat Divorce is brought to you by My Divorce Solution, offering divorce financial planning so clients can secure the divorce settlement they deserve. Visit mydivorcesolution.com to request access.
Welcome back to We Chat Divorce, the #1 podcast for straight talk about finances before, during, and after divorce. I'm Katherine Shanahan, certified divorce financial analyst and divorce financial specialist.
And I'm Karen Shalou, legal liaison and co-founder of My Divorce Solution. Around here, we believe clarity is power, and we don't sugarcoat the numbers. Anyone who knows MDS knows that's true.
Today, our Explored is going to tackle lump sum alimony buyouts. It's probably one of the hottest topics when we're talking about particularly some complex cases in negotiations. And Karen, it always amazes me some of the things that are included in the conversation and some things that are excluded from that conversation. So should you take that lump sum alimony buyout or stick with the monthly support payment?
Think of it as cash now versus cash flow later. Sounds simple in theory for sure. A buyout can feel like ripping off the Band-Aid, a clean break, no more calendar reminders, no more chasing payments. That was my experience, but it also loads every risk, market swings, longevity, taxes, right onto day one. And I know, Katherine, you're going to talk about other things that's loaded on. So it's going to be a good conversation. I know.
Yeah, one that we're asked about daily, it seems like over the last few weeks. So let's break down really today about how buyouts are actually calculated, who really benefits from them, some of the pitfalls that you may not see, and some action steps to stress test the numbers before you sign it.
And remember, nothing in this show is personal, legal, or tax advice. We're here to arm you with questions and data points you'll need when you sit down with your own professionals who are your advice givers.
Yeah, so get your questions in mind in case you have to put comments later. We're going to talk about cash now or checks later. So welcome to Divorce Explored, Alimony Buyouts Demystified. So there's a pro side to the payer and the recipient. Let's talk about that. For the payer is the person actually paying support to somebody else. For the payer, it's like the finality of it. No one, I don't care who you are, even if you say you're taking care of your ex-spouse, no one loves writing that monthly check to them. They rather just give them money as it goes, as they need it, I should say, than actually being mandated to give a monthly check, right? So they like the finality of it. There's no tracking. There's no enforcement they have to worry about. There's no modification risk. And it's over. You don't have that gnawing feeling, that you're writing that check the next month. They also get a potential discount when negotiating, because when you negotiate the present value of a future payment, it's usually a less lump sum that you actually have to give to the other person. And then you have freedom, from life triggering events, the fear of losing your job or not receiving the bonus that you thought you would receive, or actually being able to retire. So those are all positive for the payer.
Could it also be, if the payers knows that their job is going to be more, their career, their salary, their executive compensation, their commissions are going to be more in the future, and they don't have to worry about being reassessed or all of that looked at again in the future for whatever reason, if
that's why they like
modifiable.
Yeah, the modification risk. Yeah. That could go, that modification clause, if it says modifiable, can work against you as well, So to your point, if their income does go up and they have a modification clause, yeah, they could be at risk for a potential increase in their alimony payment or spousal support, whatever your state calls it. But it also then, this is the con that we'll talk about later. If you lose your job, if you don't make it modifiable, it's hard to get that modified. If you have assets, there's so many things to consider, right?
Yeah.
The pro side for the person receiving the money is they have immediate liquidity, right? They have a lump sum given to them. So if they need to use some of that to buy a home, or they want to invest it, or they need to pay off debt, it could help with that. Again, there's going to be cons to this that we'll talk about later, but that is a pro side. Again, you're protected if your spouse does lose his job. If you get the lump sum, it really doesn't affect you. If your spouse dies, you still got your lump sum. So everything is there for you. And right now it's done. And probably emotionally speaking, you don't have to remain tied to your ex-spouse by waiting for that monthly check to come in, whether it's on time or if it's late. You don't have that angst every month. So,
You
and
can also move forward to other relationships.
yeah, that's exactly where I was going
Yeah.
next. Some people say, "Oh, I'm never getting married again," or "Oh, no, 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 I'm never doing that," but they do, which is why we have higher statistics for
Yeah.
divorce rate the second and third time around. But you get to protect yourself and move on with your life.
Yeah. And some states are very, very rigid. Most are not, but rigid in what cohabitation would encompass. That have I mean, we've seen in some of our clients put them severely at risk for just, essentially going on a date. That,
Oh yeah.
it's crazy. Yeah.
hmm It's so true. Let's just talk a little bit about the cons to each person. For the payer, the con is it's a lump sum payout. You're draining some of your assets to make that payment. So that could not feel great for somebody as well. Again, you have the loss of a possible downward modification in case you lose your job, or anything happens, you've already made that payment. Tax treatment, there really is nothing since 2019 that has changed. But for the person receiving it, the support payment, you know, not everybody can save on a monthly basis. So the idea of getting a lump sum, that money is supposed to be put into an account that you take that monthly payment out each month as if you were receiving it monthly. So do you have the discipline to only take that monthly payment out? Because if, we talked earlier that a pro could have been that you could buy a house. But remember, if you do that or you pay off debt, you're dipping into that lump sum that was supposed to generate your monthly income. So will you still have cash flow if you dip into that? It takes a lot of discipline to manage that basically for yourself.
So is that passive growth on the monthly income taxable?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas alimony monthly would not be taxable.
Well, I mean, you're really getting the lump sum tax free, so that's
Mhm.
that's fair. Your monthly income, if you're investing it and there's any passive income on it, it'll be taxable. All passive
Mhm.
income will be taxable.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's pros and cons to both. And a lot of it sometimes boils down to, does the payer have the ability to make that payment, that lump sum payment? And, their con is if their spouse gets remarried, they wouldn't have had to pay all that alimony, so that's a
Yeah.
risk. It's all a risk. But it's definitely something that should be considered. And, when we talk about this, how it's calculated, you're getting a present value calculation of future growth. So if you're the person paying, for example, if you were paying $1,000 a month for 12 months for 10 years, some people just calculate that and say, okay, I'll give you $120,000. That's 10 years of $1,000 a month. The person receiving the money is thinking that I'm going to get $120,000 in lump sum. But that's not how it works. There's discount rates in there, right? So it's the value of calculating what that value is today. So in that scenario, the payer probably only has to pay you around $100,000 instead of 120. So it's good for them. They're saying over time, I'm saving $20,000, right? And this is just me throwing these numbers out as an example. And the person receiving it has to realize, if they receive that $100,000, it's like getting 120 over the 10-year period, because you're supposed to have that money invested. So it's growing as you're taking only $1,000 a month out for your support payment.
Hmm.
And that's why I mentioned, if you take 50,000 of that and pay off debt, there goes your cash flow. You're not going to keep up with $1,000 a month for 10 years. You've dipped
Yeah.
into it and the market won't keep up for that.
But what if you don't get it in a lump sum? What if there's some kind of payment plan that the spousal support is going to be delivered to the recipient?
Yeah, that is the hot topic right now. So several cases, and these are complex cases who have 5 million, $10 million, and they're going to do a lump sum buyout. And it's interesting to me to see that one party is receiving an equitable distribution, $5 million. Not one party, both parties. Let's just say the estate's worth $10 million. One party is getting $5 million, and for support purposes, they're using the passive income off of that $5 million to calculate what an alimony or spousal support payment would still be on top of that. And that's fair. If you have $5 million on your side, even if you're not employed with any W-2 earnings, passive income should be calculated as one of the factors when computing spousal support. The problem is, to your question, when are they actually getting that $5 million? So it looks good and everyone seems like it's fair, but when are you getting that? Because if the estate doesn't have $5 million that they can transfer at the signing of the agreement or whenever they decide that it would be transferred, then you don't really have that passive income coming in as the person who would be receiving support. So is it fair to calculate that passive income at that moment if you're not receiving it? No, it's not. Is it fair to let your spouse have a payment plan to pay you the $5 million? Yes, because in reality, if they don't have the money, how are they going to give it to you? So if it takes them a year or two to get their finances together, they're giving it to you in tranches, maybe. Maybe at the end of the year, you'll get a third of it. Maybe the next year, you'll get the other third. Maybe it'll take them 3 years. So your passive income is not on the full $5 million until you actually receive it. So you might need to have step up or step down, I should say, from support payments. Maybe in the first year, you're calculating it with no passive income. Maybe at the end of that first year, when you get the third, that's the passive income that it kicks in after the first year. The next year, the second, third, so you could do a step decrease or increase from your support payment.
So that would presume that the income coming to the recipient is all investments, not retirement accounts, not equity in the home and things like that, where they're really calculating it on actual accounts that create present day income, not retirement income.
Oh my gosh, Karen, that's such a great point, because a lot of times people are like, I want to keep the house. Okay. All right. You can have the house. It's worth net equity $1 million. My $500,000, I'm going to let you keep as 500,000 towards the 5 million that I owe you. Right. So now it sounds fair. Everyone thinks it's fair, but wait a minute. That's not passive income eligible for you. There is no passive income on the house that you're living in. So now you're down to 4.5 million that a calculation should have been run off. Same thing with retirement. Okay, we have $2 million in retirement. I'll give you the full 2 million. So that's another million towards my lump sum buyout. Okay, well, that's taxable income. And you brought up earlier, is it taxable or non-taxable? Well, now that's taxable income to you. So it's not just what you're receiving from the retirement. You need to, I lost the term. You need to, net of taxes, you need to reconcile what that would be. Mm-hmm. So you need to get an additional. So instead of getting $1 million, you might need 1.2 million, to cover the taxes. So all of these things look fair on a spreadsheet when you're moving these accounts, but is it fair to use those amounts when you're calculating a support payment on the passive income?
And another consideration, which is really important, we run into a lot, is if you need to be able to get a mortgage, be eligible for a mortgage, how does that factor in? Because I've not really come across any no-doc mortgages anymore. That used to be super popular. I've not.
Isn't that popular for mostly elderly people, or past age 60 or something? I don't hear them now either, too many of them.
Yeah, I haven't run across them, but I think it's really hard to be approved for a mortgage if you don't have that cash flow income. And if it's coming in tranches, like, how do you deal with that? That's a really big consideration, especially if you're tasked with the refinance of the home or if your spouse is keeping the home and you have money to buy a home, that's great. But what about qualifying for a mortgage? That's challenging because your spouse probably is not going to agree to be a co-signer.
Nor do you want them to be, because then you're
Right.
still attached to them, right? Moving forward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many considerations, but everything we're talking about requires more work. It requires multiple calculations of support at different periods of time. It requires more language to be in your final agreement so that you don't end up back in court, and if you do, you have a good agreement to stand on. But it's really worth it. We always say whatever looks fair on paper needs to have the backup data to support that. So don't just say, oh, great, I'm getting $5 million. And yes, I'm getting 250,000 off of that in income. So now I'll be set with the additional support payment, because you might not have that $5 million for 5 years. So what do you do for the next 5 years when you're counting on that?
Exactly. And sometimes, it could be a good option that your spouse acquire a loan to pay you. So many times I feel like that's not even a consideration when I'm speaking with the attorneys or the clients, because they don't want to put the payor under stress, but the recipient's going to be under stress until they get stabilized into their new life. So, sometimes some type of loan the payer could acquire to pay some of the buyout. For me, that could be a consideration. And I do press in on that sometimes, especially when I see that they're capable of doing that and it wouldn't put financial stress on them.
Yeah. I mean, here's where I'm a little bit more generous to the payer, right? I
You
like,
are more
I
than I
know.
am.
When it comes to a lump sum buyout, I certainly am. And I'll tell you why. It's because they know the wheelings and dealings, whether we think they're shady or not, or
Mhm.
we, meaning the spouse or anyone, think that their dealings are shady or not. These are generally long term marriages with large estates and complex. You know how your spouse has been wheeling and dealing, even if you don't know the specifics of it. You kind of know, right? Which is why you always think they're hiding money or something. But you
Mhm.
can't make someone pay $5 million if they don't have it. I get it. Yeah, they can apply for a loan, but applying for a loan, they're probably already leveraged out with their businesses. It's not really as easy just applying for a loan, right? Because that loan's going to affect another loan that they have a dealing with the business for something else. Everything is a trickle down effect. So I rather say, how are you going to pay this? Like, tell me how you're going to give them the benefit of a doubt. And that's why I said, I just had this conversation. They're like, well, he has to pay it. He's going to have to pay it at the signing of the agreement. Okay, well, how? You don't have $5 million sitting in an account somewhere. If you did, terrific. Okay, great. They can transfer it. But if they don't, give them the benefit of telling you how they think they can do it. And if it is a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, it's probably because that's the business deals they have set up, and it could affect their business deals. And if it does, you're not going to get that money anyway. And if you set them up with a payment plan that they're just not going to be unrealistic payment plan,
Mhm.
they're not going to make it. They don't care. They'll say, sure, I'll give you $5 million. And when it's due, they're going to say, well, I don't have it right now. And so what do? You end up back in court and they tell the judge, well, I don't have it. I know I'm in contempt. I applied for 5 loans. I wasn't approved. I'm thinking my deal is going to happen in the next 6 months. I can get it then. But you just end up in the courtroom forever. So I just say, give them the benefit of the doubt, but to protect yourself, that passive income should not be used as income for you until you receive it. Make them pay you more in alimony. That's the benefit to them. They get more time to give you a lump sum, so they get to work out their business deals, but they have to pay you alimony and they have to pay you more than they anticipated because you don't have the passive income yet.
I adopt your point. I do. 2 things. Number one, if someone's going to pay anything in tranches, make sure if that first one doesn't come through, that your agreement has a very strong protection and enforcement provision. So if that payment isn't made, agree ahead of time on what's going to be done, what assets going to be liquidated, that then, spousal support's going to be paid monthly. There's all kinds of remedies if that tranche doesn't get paid. That's better than going back to court, because going back to court, you're just going to be on the hamster wheel again. We all know what that experience is like. So it sounds good and it probably is good, but life happens, right? So then if life happens and that can't be paid, make sure there's some provisions that can be counted on that you can rely on to make sure that money makes it to your bank account.
Charge them interest. You can have an interest payment on the money they owe you too. I
Yeah.
mean,
Could be a
it's
lot of
just,
things.
if you get the mindset that this is a business transaction. So
Hmm.
someone owes you $5 million, you're actually lending it to them. And if they can't give it to you right there at settlement, you're setting up a plan. So charge them interest until they pay you.
Hmm. It's all kinds of things. And then
Mhm.
the second life event could be that, your spouse passes away. So make sure there's something in place if that happens as well for frankly any financial obligations that remain as part of the marital settlement agreement. That's really, really important.
That's really important. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to make them get a life insurance policy. Oh, yeah. Okay. And oh, we have a life insurance policy. And even if there's provisions in your agreement that says they have to provide proof that you are the beneficiaries, you don't know if they provide you the proof today and then tomorrow they change it. So it goes beyond that. What Karen's saying is make sure your agreement reads that his estate pays you back or pays you the outstanding balance of, we're using this example of the $5 million
Hmm.
before his estate pays anybody else.
Hmm. In addition to the life insurance, if he didn't or she didn't keep you on as beneficiary.
Well,
Yeah.
not in, well, in alignment with, it's just so
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
your full 5 million, right? Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Good stuff.
Well, it's definitely an option, but what's frustrating to me, honestly, Karen, is everything, right? About how the attorneys put this out there. Yeah, okay, you'll get $5 million and you're going to have passive income of
Mhm.
250, whatever it is that it's on there. Okay, that all makes sense. But why are we not taking it the step further? What
Mhm.
happens between today and the day that I get that $5 million? So now I got a reduced support payment because everyone's thinking I'm getting 250,000. And these numbers might seem really unreal to a lot of you listening to this. It's all relative to a conversation I just had. So that's why I'm speaking about that number. But what happens from today to that day that
Mhm.
you get it? Nobody goes a step beyond an agreement or a proposal to think about the impact of that.
Right. I agree. And sometimes the focus is so much on crunching the numbers, projecting out all the what ifs kind of gets left by the wayside.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're going through this kind of scenario, and if it's an option for you, and believe me, love lump sum alimony payments as to a receiver. Whoever's receiving that money, why not get the lump sum, work with your financial planner, invest that money, and live on your monthly income. You never have to deal with getting a monthly check and you can move on with your life. Like if it's an option, I love it. Most people don't like it for the payer because why pay all that money out if you don't have to? You kind of hope your spouse gets remarried or cohabitates, right? That's just normal thinking. But take some action steps for yourself. Inventory the liquidity for tax purposes and for negotiation. What money is available to get that lump sum alimony realistically, right? Model at least 3 what if scenarios. I mean, Karen and I talked about a few of them today, but kind of talk through some what if scenarios. It's really important. And, stress test your longevity. How long do you think you'll live? Because that's important also for your cash flow. But secure professional review of your settlement language. We talk about that all the time. Agreements just, they look fair, but the agreements are not written to really protect you from going to court a lot of times. There's just little loopholes when it comes to the financial piece.
Hmm. Yeah. And a lot of times they're not little. I don't know an incident where we reviewed a settlement agreement financially where we were, our jaws didn't drop for one reason or another. And sometimes it's just a nuance, it's just a buzzword, it's just something that got overlooked because putting a marital settlement agreement together is not easy. There's a lot of details.
Yeah, and at that point, everyone's tired. You're done. You want to be over with it. And you think you have an agreement, whether you like it or not, but it is your agreement. Everybody compromised. So you kind of overlook that language. I mean, I don't look at an agreement as well as you do. I mean, you get in there and you pick out these nuances and these words where me personally, I probably would have overlooked it,
Mm,
right? I just look at the numbers. So it does take a special eye to kind of look at that, but take the time you need to review that agreement to make sure it makes sense to you. We could talk forever about alimony buyouts. There's a lot of things to talk about. It's certainly something that should be considered if it's an option to you, but just think about all the things we discussed today. It's only as smart as the math behind it, and most importantly, the mindset behind it, making sure that it works for you.
For sure. So run the numbers, stress test the risk, and be brutally honest about your spending habits, because one check today has to last a lot of tomorrows.
And if you're weighing a buyout offer right now, make sure you've gone through our process. So we talk about all the considerations for you. Make sure you have your financial planner for post-divorce, so they make sure that you do stay on track with that alimony buyout. And your attorney, make sure that they have the language to protect you, so that you don't end up back in court, because clarity definitely beats regret every single time. If today's deep dive gave you an aha moment, hit follow right now, so next week's episode lands in your queue automatically. No hunting around required. Please leave us comments or questions. We'd like to address it. This podcast actually came today because of some questions that we got from clients ourselves, and they wanted us to talk about it. So please, you let us know what you want to hear about, and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely. So if you know someone wrestling with alimony math, screenshot this episode and text it to them. Share the clarity. Until then, here's to financial clarity today for confidence tomorrow.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of We Chat Divorce. We hope this episode was informative and supportive on your divorce journey. If you're looking for more support for navigating divorce with confidence and clarity, head over to mydivorcesolution.com for more podcast episodes, divorce events, and resources for your divorce. We'll see you back here for our next episode.